They say the worst decisions are made in Vegas, but no one ever tells you what happens when the best thing in your life begins with the one mistake you can't remember. The first thing Ethan Brooks noticed was the wedding band. It caught the morning sunlight spilling through the hotel curtains, a simple silver circle resting on his left hand like it had always belonged there. The second thing he noticed was Noah Carter asleep on the other side of the oversized bed, still wearing yesterday's wrinkled dress shirt, one arm hanging over the edge of the mattress, looking strangely peaceful despite the empty coffee cups, scattered poker chips, and half-deflated balloons decorating the luxurious suite. Ethan's heartbeat skipped. Noah, his best friend for 11 years. The guy who had helped him move into 4 different apartments, survived 3 terrible road trips together, celebrated every birthday, every promotion, every heartbreak. Noah, who always joked that he'd probably stay single forever because nobody could compete with their friendship. Ethan slowly sat up, rubbing his temples as fragments of the previous night flashed through his mind like disconnected photographs. Neon lights, loud laughter, someone shouting congratulations, Elvis music, a blurry chapel, champagne, then nothing. His eyes drifted toward the small wooden table near the window where an elegant white envelope rested beside 2 matching marriage certificates. His stomach dropped before he even reached them. Married. Legally married. Ethan stared at the document until the letters refused to make sense. His name. Noah's name. Clark County, Nevada. Official signatures. An embossed seal. Every detail confirmed the impossible truth. At that exact moment Noah groaned, stretched lazily, and opened one eye. Please tell me the room isn't spinning because I actually slept for 12 hours, he mumbled before noticing Ethan's expression. His smile disappeared instantly. Why do you look like someone canceled Christmas? Ethan silently handed him the certificate. Noah blinked once, then twice. His face turned completely blank. That's fake. Ethan didn't answer. Noah reached for his own left hand. The silver band reflected in his widened blue eyes. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Outside, Las Vegas buzzed with its usual energy, completely unaware that 2 lifelong friends had just discovered their lives had changed overnight. Finally, Noah let out one nervous laugh. Well, he said, forcing a grin that fooled absolutely no one. This is definitely going to make Thanksgiving awkward. Ethan wanted to laugh too. Instead, a strange heaviness settled inside his chest. He had spent years carefully hiding feelings he never intended to confess, convincing himself that loving his straight best friend was simply one of those quiet burdens people carried through adulthood. Friendship had always been enough because it had to be enough. Now a legal document had crossed a line neither of them ever planned to approach. Noah picked up his phone, already searching for flights home. We'll get this annulled, he said quickly. Easy. We fly back, find a lawyer, pretend Vegas happened to someone else. Ethan nodded because agreeing was safer than speaking the truth. But as Noah gathered their belongings, another envelope slipped from beneath the marriage certificate and landed softly on the carpet. Neither of them remembered packing it. Across the front, written in neat black ink, were 8 simple words that made both of them stop breathing for a moment. Do not open until you read this together. The hotel room suddenly felt much smaller than it had a minute earlier. Ethan bent down first, carefully picking up the mysterious envelope while Noah watched with folded arms, his usual confidence replaced by visible uncertainty. The paper looked old, almost expensive, with thick cream-colored stock and elegant handwriting that neither of them recognized. There was no return address, no hotel logo, no indication of who had left it behind. Only the message across the front. Do not open until you read this together. Noah exhaled slowly. Someone is messing with us. Ethan turned the envelope over. The seal was unbroken. Maybe. Noah forced a nervous laugh. We accidentally got married in Las Vegas, and now anonymous letters are appearing in our room. I think we passed maybe about 3 disasters ago. Ethan almost smiled, but something about the envelope made him hesitate. It did not feel like a prank. It felt intentional. Almost as though someone had expected this exact moment long before they ever checked into the hotel. Noah grabbed his suitcase and zipped it shut with more force than necessary. We are leaving. Airport first. Lawyer second. Coffee somewhere in between. Ethan nodded automatically. That sounded reasonable. Predictable. Safe. The elevator ride to the lobby was unusually quiet. Normally, they could fill hours with meaningless conversation, arguing over baseball scores, favorite movies, or which diner made the best pancakes. Today, neither of them seemed capable of finding ordinary words. Every time Ethan looked down, the silver wedding band reminded him that ordinary had disappeared overnight. Outside, the warm Nevada sun reflected against rows of glass buildings while tourists hurried along the sidewalks carrying shopping bags and cameras, laughing as though the city existed only for unforgettable memories. Ethan wondered how many people walked these same streets carrying secrets instead. Their rideshare arrived within minutes. Noah slid into the passenger seat, while Ethan settled into the back beside his suitcase. Halfway to the airport, Noah's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. That is strange. What happened? Ethan asked. Noah refreshed the airline application twice before turning the screen around. Every available flight home had disappeared. Delayed. Canceled. Fully booked. Every single one. That cannot be real, Noah muttered. The driver overheard them through the rearview mirror and shrugged. Big convention this weekend. Happens more often than people think. Earliest seats are probably tomorrow night if you are lucky. Tomorrow night. Ethan felt the words settle heavily inside him. Another full day together. Another day wearing rings neither of them had chosen, while carrying questions neither of them could answer. As the car pulled beneath the airport terminal, Noah sighed and leaned back against the seat. Fine. One more day. He glanced toward Ethan with an exhausted smile. But tomorrow we fix everything. Ethan wanted to believe him. They checked into another nearby hotel after discovering every airport hotel had long waiting lists. The room was simple, quiet, and almost painfully ordinary compared with the extravagant suite they had left behind. Ethan placed his backpack on the desk. Something slid out of the front pocket and landed softly on the carpet. It was another envelope. Same cream-colored paper. Same handwriting. This time the message was even shorter. Read the first one before sunset. After that, everything changes. The digital clock beside the hotel bed read 5:41 in the afternoon. Sunset was less than an hour away. Ethan rested both mysterious envelopes on the small wooden table between two untouched cups of coffee, while Noah paced slowly across the room, stopping every few steps to glance toward the window, as though an explanation might be waiting somewhere beyond the skyline. This is ridiculous, Noah finally said. Two anonymous letters telling us what to do. We are adults. We can throw them away. Ethan looked at the sealed paper without moving. Then why have we not done it already? Noah opened his mouth to answer, but found nothing convincing. He stopped pacing. The silence between them carried the familiar comfort of 11 years of friendship, yet something inside it had shifted. They no longer felt like two friends trapped in an awkward situation. They felt like two people standing on opposite sides of a door that neither of them remembered locking. Ethan carefully picked up the first envelope and broke the seal. Inside was a single folded sheet. No signature. No date. Just neat handwriting stretching across the page. If you are reading this, then neither of you remembered the promise you made. Read every letter before making a decision you cannot undo. Noah frowned. Promise? What promise? Ethan continued reading aloud. You promised that if life ever pulled you apart, you would tell each other the truth by writing letters instead of hiding behind silence. If one of you was too afraid to speak, the letters would speak instead. Ethan slowly lowered the page. His mind searched desperately through years of shared memories until one image surfaced with surprising clarity. Freshman year of college. A late night on the roof of their apartment building after both of them had watched Ethan's parents quietly sign divorce papers earlier that afternoon. Noah had handed him a notebook and said that sometimes people wrote better than they talked. They had laughed and made a dramatic promise to always leave letters behind if there was ever something too difficult to say out loud. Ethan had completely forgotten. Apparently someone else had not. Noah stared toward the ceiling before letting out a quiet laugh, filled with disbelief. I remember the notebook. Ethan looked up immediately. You do? Noah nodded slowly. I thought it was one of those strange conversations people have at 2 in the morning that nobody actually remembers. Ethan reached into his backpack almost instinctively. Buried beneath a sweater was an old leather journal with worn corners. He had carried it for years without opening it. Inside the front cover, folded carefully between yellowed pages, rested another sealed envelope. The handwriting matched perfectly. Ethan's pulse quickened. "This has been with me all along," he whispered. Noah stepped closer until they were standing shoulder to shoulder. Neither noticed how naturally the distance between them had disappeared. Noah looked at the envelope and smiled with quiet surprise. "Looks like one of us actually kept the promise." Ethan swallowed hard because he suddenly realized something even stranger. He had never written letters to anyone else. Every blank page inside that journal had always felt as though it belonged to only one person. Before either of them could open the next envelope, Ethan's phone vibrated. A calendar reminder appeared across the screen. "Created 11 years ago." 6 words. "Do not forget the letters together." Neither of them spoke for nearly a full minute. The reminder remained glowing on Ethan's phone screen until it slowly faded into darkness, leaving only their reflections in the black glass. Noah lowered himself into the chair across the table and rested both elbows on his knees. 11 years, he said quietly. How does someone schedule a reminder that far ahead and completely forget about it? Ethan looked down at the weathered journal still resting in his hands. Maybe because whatever we were trying to protect had not happened yet. Noah considered that answer longer than expected before giving a small nod. Outside, the first colors of sunset painted the Las Vegas skyline in warm shades of gold and orange, reminding them that the second envelope had given them a deadline they were quickly approaching. Ethan carefully unfolded the next letter hidden inside the journal. Unlike the first message, this one began with a date. September 18th, 11 years earlier. Dear future us, if we are reading this together, then somehow we made it through another year of life. That alone is worth celebrating. But if we are reading this because something feels broken between us, promise me one thing. Read every letter before deciding who the other person has become. People change slowly. Love changes quietly. Fear changes everything. Ethan paused. The last sentence lingered in the room long after the words had been spoken aloud. Noah leaned back in his chair and stared toward the ceiling again. That sounds like something you would write. Ethan looked surprised. You think so? Noah smiled faintly. You were always the hopeful one. Ethan almost disagreed, but another memory surfaced instead. They had spent years exchanging birthday cards filled with jokes, handwritten notes after difficult breakups, encouragement before job interviews, congratulations after promotions. Somehow they had been writing pieces of their lives to each other all along, without realizing those small messages had become a language only they understood. Noah suddenly stood and walked toward his suitcase. After searching through the front compartment, he pulled out an old canvas pouch that Ethan had never seen before. Inside were dozens of folded papers held together with a faded blue ribbon. I completely forgot these existed, Noah admitted. Every time you ever wrote me anything, I kept it. Ethan blinked in disbelief. Birthday cards, Christmas notes, postcards from business trips. Congratulations after Ethan opened his first design studio. Every handwritten message he had ever given Noah had been saved, carefully protected. Ethan laughed softly, overwhelmed by something he could not yet name. You never throw anything away, do you? Noah shrugged. Only receipts. The tension between them eased for the first time since waking up in Vegas. It felt familiar again, like two lifelong friends sharing old memories instead of two strangers trapped inside an impossible situation. Then Noah noticed something tucked beneath the blue ribbon. It was another sealed envelope, smaller than the others. Across the front, written in Ethan's unmistakable handwriting, were words he did not remember writing. For Noah, only open if I ever stop telling you the truth. Noah looked up slowly, his smile disappearing. Ethan's face had already turned pale because he knew with absolute certainty that he had never intended for those words to be forgotten. Noah held the sealed envelope between both hands as though opening it too quickly might erase whatever truth had survived inside for more than a decade. The room had grown almost completely dark except for the soft glow of a single bedside lamp, and neither of them reached to switch on another light. Somehow the quiet felt appropriate. Ethan watched every movement with a tightening chest. You do not have to read it, he said softly. Noah looked up with a tired smile. You wrote it for me. I think I owe the younger version of you the courtesy of listening. He carefully broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. The handwriting was unmistakably Ethan's, neat but slightly uneven. The kind he used before years of professional design work refined every line. Noah began reading aloud. Dear Noah, if you are opening this, then I probably convinced both of us that everything was fine. I have always been good at pretending. I hope I never become so afraid of losing our friendship that I stop telling you the truth. If that day comes, I want you to know that every important chapter of my life somehow begins with you. You were there when I learned how to believe in myself. You were there when my parents separated and I thought nothing would ever feel normal again. You were there when I failed, when I succeeded, when I laughed harder than I thought possible. I keep telling people that you are my best friend because that is the safest answer I know how to give. Noah's voice became quieter with every sentence. Ethan closed his eyes. He remembered writing those words late one autumn evening after returning home from dinner with Noah, convincing himself that putting the truth on paper was enough because no one else would ever read it. Noah continued, "Maybe one day I will be brave enough to explain what I really mean. Until then, please never mistake my silence for the absence of feeling. Sometimes silence is simply love wearing fear as a disguise." The room became perfectly still. Noah lowered the letter into his lap without speaking. Ethan could not bring himself to meet his eyes. "I never meant for you to find that," he admitted after a long moment. "I wrote it because I thought writing would make the feelings easier to carry." Noah looked back down at the page. "How old were you?" 22. Noah gave a slow nod. "That was the year I moved to Seattle for work." Ethan smiled sadly. "Yes. Why did you never send it?" Ethan laughed quietly, though there was little humor in the sound. "Because you kept talking about the women you were dating. Because I thought telling you would destroy the only friendship that ever felt like home. Because some people would rather keep someone in their life as a friend than risk losing them completely." Noah remained silent for several more seconds before folding the letter with extraordinary care and sliding it back into its envelope. Then he reached for the stack of old notes tied together with the faded blue ribbon. His fingers stopped on one he had written years earlier. "I think it is my turn," he said quietly. Ethan looked up in surprise. Across the front of the envelope, in Noah's familiar handwriting, were words Ethan had never seen before. "For Ethan, if I ever figure out what my heart has been trying to tell me." For several long seconds, neither of them reached for the envelope. It rested between them on the small wooden table like something fragile enough to change the course of both their lives. Noah finally drew a slow breath and smiled without looking up. "I remember writing this," he admitted. Ethan stared at him in disbelief. "You do?" Noah nodded. "Not every word, just the reason." He carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet inside. The paper had softened with age, its creases revealing that someone had almost opened it more than once before deciding against it. Noah began reading aloud. "Dear Ethan, if you are reading this, then I finally stopped pretending that confusion is the same thing as certainty. I have spent months trying to convince myself that what I feel is only friendship because that answer makes life easier. Everyone expects life to fit into simple categories: best friends, co-workers, family, relationships. But nothing about you has ever felt simple." Ethan felt his heartbeat quicken. Noah continued reading, his voice growing quieter with every sentence. "Whenever something good happens, you are the first person I want to call. Whenever something falls apart, you are the only person whose opinion actually matters. I keep dating wonderful women, hoping one relationship will finally make me stop comparing every conversation to the ones I have with you. It never happens. They deserve someone whose heart is completely available. Mine always seems to wander back to my best friend." Ethan slowly lowered his eyes. Every date Noah had ever mentioned, every relationship Ethan had quietly endured hearing about, suddenly carried an entirely different meaning. Noah stopped reading for a moment, swallowing carefully before continuing. "I do not know what this feeling means. Maybe I am simply afraid of growing older without the person who knows me better than anyone else. Maybe I am confusing comfort with love. Or maybe I have spent so much time worrying about who I am supposed to become that I never stop to ask who makes me happiest exactly as I am. If future me has figured it out, then I hope he is finally brave enough to stop hiding behind the phrase, 'I am straight,' every time someone asks why he never stays in love for very long." The room fell completely silent. Noah lowered the letter into his lap, staring at the final sentence as though seeing it for the first time. Ethan searched his friend's face for the certainty that had always seemed so obvious over the years. Instead, he found only honesty, quiet and vulnerable. Noah laughed softly, shaking his head. "I thought I knew myself." Ethan finally spoke. "Maybe you only knew the answer everyone expected you to give." Noah looked across the table, his blue eyes reflecting years of conversations that suddenly made sense in ways neither of them had imagined. Every relationship I ever had ended for the same reason, he said quietly. They always told me it felt like part of me was somewhere else. He smiled sadly. I thought they meant work. I thought they meant I was too independent. Ethan remained silent. Noah looked directly into his eyes. I think they meant you. Before Ethan could respond, his phone vibrated again. Another forgotten reminder appeared on the screen, this one created exactly 10 years earlier. It contained only one sentence. Tomorrow, tell him before it is too late. Ethan slowly closed his eyes because tomorrow had never come. Neither of them noticed that midnight had quietly arrived. The city outside still shimmered with bright lights and distant laughter, but inside the small hotel room, time seemed to move differently. Ethan continued staring at the reminder on his phone until the screen dimmed once again. Tomorrow, tell him before it is too late. 10 years earlier, he had honestly believed there would always be another tomorrow. Another birthday. Another road trip. Another late-night conversation over greasy diner food, where he could finally gather enough courage to tell Noah everything. Somehow, every tomorrow had become another year of silence. Noah reached across the table and gently pushed Ethan's phone aside. You were going to tell me. It was not a question. Ethan nodded slowly. More than once. A quiet smile appeared on Noah's face, touched with both sadness and understanding. Then something always stopped you. Ethan laughed softly. Usually you. Noah looked confused. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his memories unfolding with surprising clarity. Do you remember the night before you moved to Seattle? Noah nodded. We watched the sunrise from the pier. I almost told you then. Noah blinked. Ethan continued before he could interrupt. But halfway through the conversation, you started talking about a woman from your new office. You said you thought she might finally be someone special. I remember smiling and telling you that I hoped she made you happy. Noah lowered his eyes. She never did. Ethan gave a faint smile. I know. Noah suddenly stood and walked toward the window overlooking the glowing Las Vegas Strip. Do you remember Emily? He asked quietly. Ethan nodded. You dated for almost a year. Noah rested one hand against the glass. She asked me one question the night we broke up. He turned slowly. She asked who I loved more, her or the person whose name I smiled every time my phone lit up. Ethan felt his breath catch. What did you tell her? Noah looked almost embarrassed by the memory. I laughed because I thought she was being ridiculous. He paused. She did not laugh back. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything either of them had said all evening. Noah returned to the table and carefully unfolded another note from the blue ribbon. Unlike the previous letters, this one was barely half a page. He read it silently first before handing it to Ethan. Across the top it read, Things I never said out loud. Beneath it was a handwritten list. Thank you for making every city feel like home. Thank you for answering every late-night call. Thank you for believing in me before I believed in myself. I still look for you in every crowd. I still save the seat beside me without thinking. I still compare every important person to you. Ethan reached the final line and stopped breathing for a moment. If I ever lose you because I was afraid to understand my own heart, I hope someday you forgive me. Ethan slowly folded the paper, unable to find words strong enough to answer years of quiet honesty. Noah looked at him with calm eyes that no longer carried confusion. I spent years believing I was protecting our friendship, he said. Now I think I was protecting my fear. Before Ethan could respond, someone knocked gently on the hotel room door. Both men exchanged puzzled looks. They were not expecting anyone. Noah opened the door carefully. Resting alone on the carpet outside was a small wooden box with a brass latch. Inside were dozens of sealed envelopes, each labeled with a different year of their friendship, waiting patiently for truths that neither of them had ever been brave enough to speak. The wooden box sat unopened between them until the first light of morning began to soften the edges of the hotel curtains. Ethan carefully lifted the brass latch. Inside, the envelopes were arranged in perfect order, one for every year since they had met, each bearing a handwritten note in the corner. Freshman year. First apartment. Seattle. Your promotion. Dad's funeral. Mom's birthday. Every milestone they had shared had somehow been preserved inside this quiet archive of memories. Noah picked up the envelope marked Seattle and slowly opened it. A single sheet unfolded into his hands. It was written in Ethan's handwriting. The date matched the morning Noah had left for his new job. Dear Noah, today I smiled while helping you load your boxes because I wanted your last memory of home to be a happy one. The truth is that every mile between us already feels too far. I keep reminding myself that real friendship survives distance. I only hope my heart learns the difference. Noah lowered the page without speaking. He reached for another envelope labeled Emily. This one had been written by Noah. Dear Ethan, you asked me tonight if I was happy. I said yes because that seemed like the right answer. The truth is that happiness keeps feeling incomplete, and I cannot explain why. Every good moment still makes me want to call you first. I hope one day that stops because I think it is unfair to everyone else. Ethan looked up slowly. It never stopped. Noah smiled with quiet acceptance. No, it never did. One by one, they opened the remaining letters. Each revealed another moment they had experienced together, but through emotions neither had ever spoken aloud. A baseball game where Noah remembered watching Ethan laugh instead of the final inning. A Christmas dinner where Ethan secretly wished Noah would never move away again. A weekend hiking trip where Noah realized silence could feel more meaningful than conversation simply because Ethan was beside him. None of the letters contained dramatic declarations. Instead, they revealed something far more powerful. Two ordinary lives had slowly become inseparable without either man noticing where friendship ended and something deeper quietly began. As the final envelope was opened, a folded document slipped onto the table. It was their marriage certificate from the chapel, now tucked inside a clear protective sleeve. Beneath it rested one last handwritten note. Congratulations. You finally stopped running from the same story you have both been writing for 11 years. Noah laughed through a slow exhale and gently shook his head. I spent all this time thinking Vegas changed everything. Ethan looked at the wedding band on his finger before meeting Noah's eyes. Maybe Vegas did not change anything. Noah waited. Ethan smiled softly. Maybe it only forced us to read the chapters we skipped. A comfortable silence settled over the room, no longer awkward or uncertain. For the first time since waking up in Las Vegas, neither of them seemed interested in finding the fastest way to erase what had happened. Instead, they sat beside each other watching the sunrise paint the city in warm gold. Noah finally broke the silence. The lawyer's office opens at 9. Ethan nodded. I know. Noah looked at the marriage certificate, then back at Ethan. What if we do not go there first? Ethan searched Noah's face, expecting hesitation, but found only calm honesty. Noah smiled in the same quiet way he always had before asking something that mattered. Before we decide whether this marriage should end, would you let me take you on our first real date? Noah's question lingered in the quiet room long after the words were spoken. Ethan looked at the marriage certificate one last time before folding it carefully and placing it back inside the wooden box beside every letter that had somehow carried them to this moment. Then he smiled, a real smile that Noah had not seen since before they arrived in Las Vegas. Yes, he answered simply. I would like that. Their first real date was almost disappointingly ordinary, and somehow that made it perfect. They wandered through a small neighborhood cafe instead of an expensive restaurant. They shared pancakes because Noah insisted breakfast tasted better after impossible nights. They walked without rushing, laughing about forgotten college stories, terrible hairstyles, and road trips where they had sung completely different songs at the top of their lungs. Nothing around them had changed. The city was still noisy. Tourists still hurried past with cameras and shopping bags. The only thing that had changed was the honesty between them. For the first time in 11 years, neither man edited his feelings before speaking. By late afternoon, they found themselves sitting on a quiet bench overlooking the fountains near the center of the city. Noah held a folded piece of stationery that he had purchased from a nearby bookstore. One last letter, he said. Ethan smiled. I thought we finally ran out. Noah shook his head. Not this one. He handed Ethan the blank sheet along with a pen. Together they began writing, not across from each other, but sitting side by side. Dear future us, if you ever forget how you got here, remember that love did not arrive overnight. It arrived one conversation, one road trip, one birthday, one goodbye, one letter at a time. Never let fear become quieter than honesty again. When they finished, they folded the page and placed it inside the wooden box with the others. There was no mystery left to solve, and no hidden message waiting inside another envelope. The greatest secret had never been hidden in the letters at all. It had been quietly growing inside two ordinary hearts that believed friendship was the safest place to hide love. Before leaving Las Vegas, they stopped outside the small wedding chapel where everything had begun. The same bright signs still welcomed strangers looking for unforgettable stories. Noah looked toward the entrance before turning to Ethan. "Do you remember anything now?" Ethan laughed softly. "Only pieces." "Me too." Noah slipped his hand into Ethan's, not because a piece of paper required it, but because it finally felt natural. "Maybe that is enough." Ethan looked down at their matching wedding bands, no longer symbols of confusion, but reminders that some journeys make sense only after looking backward. "I think the letters remembered for us until we were ready." 1 year later, they returned to the same city, not chasing answers this time, but celebrating the life they had chosen together. They visited the cafe where they had shared their first real date, carried the wooden box filled with every letter, and added one more envelope to the collection. Across the front, they wrote together, "To the next 11 years. As they closed the lid, Noah smiled and quietly said, "We spent so many years afraid that telling the truth would end our story." Ethan squeezed his hand gently and answered with complete certainty, "It was only the beginning."